Imagine a game of football where players could stand absolutely anywhere they wanted, at any time, with zero restrictions on their positioning. The smartest, most ruthlessly effective strategy wouldn't involve elegant dribbling or complex passing networks. Teams would simply park their tallest, strongest attacker directly next to the opponent's goalkeeper and launch the ball 80 yards down the field. You probably recognize this tactic from playground sports. It's called cherry picking. If professional teams actually played this way, the midfield would be bypassed. The game would devolve into a repetitive series of long kicks and immediate scrambles at the goal mouth, removing the incentive for continuous, flowing buildup. To close this loophole, rulemakers introduced a spatial restriction that forces teams to build play through the midfield rather than bypassing it entirely. But mapping a boundary line onto a football pitch is a serious design problem. Look at the massive scale of the playing surface and how widely these players are scattered. Painting fixed lines on the grass like a basketball court wouldn't work. Football is a continuous end-to-end sport, and static zones would create unnatural bottlenecks. So the rulemakers devised an elegant solution. Instead of relying on paint, they used the defending players themselves to create a dynamic, shifting boundary line that moves continuously up and down the pitch. This diagram shows a top-down view of the pitch, allowing us to break down the first requirement of this rule. To be in an offside position, an attacker must cross the midpoint and be entirely located within the opponent's half of the field. Second, that attacking player must also be located closer to the opponent's goal line than the ball itself. And third, the attacker must be closer to the goal line than the second-to-last defender. Since the goalkeeper usually counts as the final defender, this critical boundary is almost always drawn right across the heels of the last defending outfield player. The moment an attacker crosses all three of these conditions, the halfway line, the ball, and that final defender, they enter into an offside position. It is a strictly monitored zone of temporary illegality. But here is where most new fans get confused. Simply standing inside that zone is perfectly legal. An attacker can hang out there for the entire 90 minutes without drawing a whistle. The penalty is only triggered by a very specific action. It becomes an offense the exact split second a teammate touches the ball to make a pass. Look at this diagram showing the exact moment the pass is initiated. This creates a freeze frame. At the precise millisecond the ball is kicked, the spatial positions of every single player on the field are locked in for evaluation. If the attacker was trapped behind that frozen offside line when the ball was struck, the play is dead. But if they start level with the defender and sprint past the line after the ball leaves their teammate's foot, the run is perfectly legal. The offside rule is a precise intersection. It requires referees to evaluate both the moving geography of the players and a single microsecond in time simultaneously. However, the rule does include a few specific safe zones where that cherry-picking exploit is neutralized by the natural setup of the play. You cannot be penalized for offside if you receive the ball directly from a play restarting out of bounds, like a throw-in, a goal kick, or a corner kick. You are also completely safe if you receive a pass while still standing in your own half, or if you receive a backward pass where you are stationed strictly behind the ball. Because these scenarios represent moments where the game is naturally resetting or the attacking team is retreating, the shifting defensive boundary simply isn't needed. In practice, this rule forces a constant tactical struggle between the position of the ball and the movement of the defensive line. Defending teams weaponize this rule. By moving their entire defensive block up the pitch in total unison, they can hold a high line and actively trap attacking players in an offside position. To counter this, attackers calculate their movements with extreme precision, timing their explosive sprints to beat the freeze frame millisecond before the defender can react. This single spatial restriction forces every action to be earned, dictating the pace of play and the positioning of all 22 players on the field. Historically, enforcing this line relied entirely on human assistant referees, trying to track multiple sprinting athletes and a moving ball at the exact same time. Today, video assistant referees, or VAR, use dedicated cameras and skeletal tracking technology to measure that freeze frame passing moment down to the absolute millimeter. If you want to see this geometry in action, the official IFAB website has animations breaking down exactly how these tight margins are evaluated during live match play. Recognizing how the offside line works makes it possible to see the logic behind player positioning and the strategic design beneath the speed of the match.